I do want to set the stage by, obviously, there are different perspectives on our panel today. So we do want to make sure that we have a very lively discussion on all the different trade-offs and all the different challenges. And maybe to set us up as a result of that, of the video, but also bringing your perspectives, Kate and Jyoti, into this conversation. We know we have to make our food system more resilient, right? Food is also a conversation that spans technology, emotions. It's hugely emotional. Obviously, we've looked at the consequences through an environmental perspective as well. But what are the inefficiencies, maybe to start us off, Mark, that why are we struggling with this?
Well, I think we're struggling in the sense that, one of the comments there that I really, really like that Jack Bobo shares with us is that we're going to need as much food as we've produced in the last 10,000 years to be produced for simply the growth in population we have in the next 30 to 40 years. And so I think when we look at this, plaudits to you on the project that you guys are working on, we look at a lot of the challenges and we think, I think we're thinking about the food system slightly in a skewed way. We already have half of our global population that is protein insecure. We also see major trends, especially I would say in the last 6 to 12 months, where a lot of people are thinking they actually should be increasing the amount of protein that they consume. So the challenge in front of us in terms of a food system is very significant simply because of the growth that we have. And at the same time, we are doing this within the lens that I could say in this group, you are the furthest away you've ever been from your food production. In most populations, we were very, very close to the farm. We knew relatives, we had family members that were still connected in the food system. Now, very, very small amount of our population is actually focused on food production. And so, that polarization, I think, is a major, major threat for us. Because if we don't have the understanding, and as we hear right there at the end, if we don't have our farmers, I think we're really at a loss and we're missing what is maybe one of the most powerful tools we can have to not only decarbonize that supply chain, but actually decarbonize in general. The cheapest, most inexpensive way, we heard a little bit about it earlier, to potentially capture carbon is probably in our soils and our soil health. And the tools and the implementation of the innovation that already exists today could help us to make a massive step forward in terms of reducing that. We had a comment earlier around agriculture in general being a small c conservative industry, and it is. There's high level of risk. If you're making money every other year, you're probably doing okay. And so when we think about farmers, I think we have to make sure we're not vilifying them, we're not polarizing, and we're realizing that actually they can be a huge, huge part of a solution, and that animal agriculture is part of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's the point of the food imperative, which was what I was sort of touched on earlier, is that we need to bring in different voices and think about this from an ecosystem perspective and a systemic approach rather than in silos. But Jyoti, I know you do a lot of work as well, and we've talked about Regen Ag this morning. We talk about farmers. Can you share a little bit about what your perspective is on those challenges?
Yeah, so Nature's Path is our family-run business, started by my parents in 1985. We're the first organic breakfast cereal company in North America. And our purpose is to always leave the earth better than we found it. And really our belief is that it starts with the soil in which we're growing food. And so we've been a certified organic company from the very beginning. And in the past number of years, as we've seen our farmers within our supply chain struggle to adapt to extreme weather events, we've been investing in partnerships that help build the resilience at a farm level to those challenges. So it's been a challenge within our supply chain, and it's something that we've been investing in. So,
Kate, can I bring you into the conversation?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar, Sodexo is a global food service and facilities company. So you may have seen us in the Delta Lounge on your way here. Hopefully you will visit us at the New York City Health and Hospitals, colleges, universities, on and on. We are a very large buyer. We're in 55 countries. We serve 100 million meals a day. Just billions of dollars in food purchases. We, really ask the questions around how do we meet this demand without overstressing our ecosystems, without, contributing to climate change, but also how do we build resilience into the foundation of our business model, our supply chains. And so, working with our suppliers, we're emphasizing sourcing sustainable, regenerative. How are we working with suppliers on their transition to a lower carbon supply chain? And ensuring that we're supporting small and local and diverse suppliers in their transition so that it's equitable.
And it's not a one size fits all, right? There's going to be solutions that come from smallholders, solutions that come from large. So how are you thinking about that sourcing that you were talking about? Yeah.
So it is very localized. Yes, we have these bold, audacious global deforestation commitments that look at some of those larger commodities, but we also have to think about what's happening. What are those local short supply chains in the thousands of communities where we operate? And so we're looking at one of our brands, Good Eating Company, is sort of one of our elevated brands where we're trying to bring a more sustainable offer to our customers, is looking at how do we bring those regenerative suppliers into our supply chain in a way that supports their process, but also is efficient for us. I mean, we cannot engage with hundreds of thousands of suppliers at the farm level. So we're partnering with a nonprofit called Supply Chain that are helping us connect with those regenerative suppliers, onboard them into our existing supply distributors, verifying their practices. We've committed to 15% of our food spend for Good Eating Company to come from farms with regenerative practices. As of this year, 3 years into the pilots, we have about 75 farms that have come on. We have just surpassed $1 million in spend. We're probably not going to meet that 15% in time. We're at about 8% right now, but we're proud of that, and we're learning along the way what it takes to bring these regenerative farms on.
Yeah. Jyoti, can I turn to you? We talked about regenerative agriculture and you mentioned organic. How do they connect?
Yeah, I mean, so we are a supporter of the regenerative organic standard. It is a third-party verified standard that builds on organic certification as its basis. So really taking the best organic practices around, cover cropping, crop rotations, and then it also adds on a layer of social fairness and animal welfare. So, in our mind, it's a gold standard. We like that it's third-party verified. I think there are other standards out there that also have that third-party verification. For our business in particular, this is the one that works for us.
And how does technology play into all of this? Like, is regenerative meaning we're going back? Or is it that we're incorporating technology into this? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really taking practices that have worked for thousands of years in communities around the world and implementing them at a farm level in North America, globally as well. It's creating communities of practice. It's not, yes, there are uses of technology in terms of how are we measuring improvements, but we're not utilizing like GE technology or other types of
So it's much more nature-based.
Yeah. It learns from natural systems and puts those learnings into practice.
And speaking of nature-based, but I do want to come to you, Mark. We did see the documentary, and I'm sure you've heard a lot from different people on animal agriculture and the pushback on animal agriculture. And how do we think about this? We can't tell people what to eat and what not to eat, but how do we make our food system more sustainable with animal agriculture as well?
I think the thing to watch out on is that I think that the assumption, the default, has been that animal agriculture is negative for the environment. And that has not been proven to be true. So, we have a challenge, we know, and we speak a little bit about it in the film around methane. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. and as you see, cows in particular, we're using the cow as kind of the lens to look at this broader sense of animal agriculture. Is a major producer of methane, but that methane is with us for 10 to 12 years. We have a lot of different ways to implement natural solutions, natural nutritional solutions to actually reduce that methane. And so I think a big piece of this is also the measurement. What gets measured gets done, of course. And so it's not just quantifying what is the emission. Let's not think of the cow. The cow is part of an ecosystem. The cow is part of what actually can feed the microbiome of the soil, and that actually can result in us actually capturing more carbon than that animal is emitting. And so that's a really exciting thing. We have examples where we are capturing more carbon. We are, in a way, reducing greenhouse gas emissions through beef production. That's mind-blowing. That's not something that I would have even thought, having grown up in the animal agriculture industry, the crop nutrition industry, 5-10 years ago. But these projects are really stunning, and a big part of it is because we now have the science to understand what is going on in the microbiome of the soil, and we have an ability to measure that, and that's a really, really exciting thing. And so I think it's these sometimes the assumptive, initial step of saying, we should be going meatless Monday, we should be removing protein from our diets. I think that pushes us in a direction where we may lose too much of the audience to be able to bring along with us. And we're going to need them to do that. So technology is a big piece, but everything we try and do is with that consumer in mind, with your consumer in mind, who wants a product that they can feel good about consuming, that is being produced in a way that is aligned with nature. And we can do that today already, I think, with a lot of the technologies. But it's conversations like this that are really important. And that's why we decided to step out and make the documentary.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how do you, there's definitely a need for protein, as you mentioned, obviously in the US, but you think about Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, you need a lot, there's a focus on nutrition and diets. And how do you reconcile the beef conversation, the cow conversation with the, cultured protein labs, those sorts of, how do you,
We're going to need it all. I mean, I think we are going to need lots of different solutions for different consumers who have different demands and requirements. We have different capabilities. I think one of the points that's really important when we do think specifically of ruminant animals is that they are using marginal land. They are using land we can't use for crop production. They are also using a lot of byproducts, raw materials that can't be consumed by humans. And so 86% of what we feed to dairy and beef animals is inedible to humans. And so we are utilizing this material. If we break this material down, if we landfill it, if we leave it to microorganisms, which is what I did my PhD on, the greenhouse gas production of that is actually much higher than utilizing this friend, I would say, of mankind, of humans, the cow, who has this incredible ability to break these fibrous materials down into something that we can utilize. And so that's a piece of it that I think we do have to bridge that gap. But especially, in the documentary, one of the most impactful projects I mentioned earlier was actually in India with Amul Dairy. Alltech, through our partnership with Amul, have been providing dairy products to schools. This is often the only protein that these kids get. And one of the most impactful things we were able to do with that project was actually do something completely different, which was put in a second bathroom in those schools. What would the impact of that be? Many of those families are very conservative. They don't want their girls going and using the same bathroom as boys. That basically doubled the amount of education through that partnership that those girls received. That's the type of thing that you can do when you engage with agriculture, when you're working with rural communities in a meaningful way and through partnerships. And I think that's where, we see this is a polarizing, it is an emotional conversation, but when we can bring things together, I think it can be really more powerful.
Kate, can I ask you to chime in as well? Like, obviously, you work with or you support consumers directly in nutrition. Are you seeing any pushback in terms of shifts in preferences? Mm-hmm.
So interestingly, we have been watching the trends, consumer trends on protein and sort of protein diversification. Where is the consumer appetite for plant-forward, plant-based? And it's frankly plateaued. This year, 25% of consumers across generations and socioeconomics and gender, 25% are considering themselves meat limiters. So that could span from, vegan, vegetarian, to just, I'm open to having more plant-based in my diet. So that's frankly lower than we thought the trends would go. But I think it speaks to what we were sharing, Mark, that people want choice. They want to be able to, they don't want to be told how to eat and what their values should be. And we do need a range of protein. So we are really trying to focus on like maybe less meat, better quality. And I think that's what you're sort of advocating for as well, is how do we ensure that the practices that are supporting animal agriculture lend themselves to better quality product, but also more resilient supply chain. And then also let's look at protein diversification, because our consumers are seeking that. And that might be, just more whole plant proteins, maybe some innovation. But I think really looking at the landscape to build a portfolio that works for all consumer types.
Sometimes we say it's not just one solution. You need to look at all the different tools in the toolbox and kind of to be able to make that happen. Jyoti, can I bring you into the conversation as well? Regenerative ag, right? We've talked about one of the big tools that everyone's talking about now, but how do you scale? Is scale an issue still, or are we past that? And if we are, how do we do it?
Yeah, so scale is an issue. When you think about regenerative organic certified, it's a relatively new standard. I think it came online in 2020. We engaged in the first pilot farm in 2019, the largest the largest farm in the pilot, and the first oat farm to implement regenerative organic certified practices. And what we have done to help scale the work is partner in a pre-competitive way with another company called Riverside. They make made good food. If you have kids, I'm sure you've bought their little granola balls. And Bay State Milling, which is a milling company, to work with farms across the Canadian prairies, starting with 4. We're now up to 25 farms. I think we started with around 2,000 acres. We're now at 36,000 acres, to train and educate these farmers on implementing regenerative organic practices, to measure progress over time through partnership with the Canadian Organic Growers, who provides technical expertise to these farmers. They've also helped create a community of practice where they get together to share challenges and opportunities. And it's been incredibly successful. We've had a 80% uptake rate in practices that have been shared. And 90% of the farmers said that it was a valuable use of their time. They want to continue on in the program. So
that's a success. I do want to open up to the audience as well. If you have any questions. Okay, we've got 1 and 2. So maybe, and 3. Okay, maybe we do this one first. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Louisiana with BASF, and a lot that you have been talking is about how to be more productive and how to produce even more. But then, as far as I recall, 40% of everything that we produce is waste. Right? Why do we need to produce more if we're wasting 40% of everything that we are producing in ag?
May I add to that? Where are we losing/wasting, and how do we limit that?
Yeah, I think I'm sure you'll have some comments. I mean, I think it's interesting because what we tend to see is in the rich world, let's say, a lot of the food is wasted because we are wasting it. In the developing world, it's often destroyed. It's spoiling on the way to market, and that's one of the big challenges. And so there's a lot of technology there that there's a huge opportunity. And 100%, you're right. I would say that many of those waste materials do end up in the food industry. And so I think one of the major points is we have been asking producers to produce food more cheaply and more of it. We are now changing that dynamic, and the type of work that you're doing with your suppliers is exactly that, the same for you. We're now saying to them, think about these other characteristics, and waste is going to be one of those. With the Sustainable Development Goals, that's something that people are really focused on, food waste. And so those are things that are making progress, and you're 100% right, that number has to come down. it's absolutely, a huge issue within this overall dynamic.
Jyoti, Kate?
Yeah, it is definitely an issue and an opportunity when you think about the growth of the upcycled food industry. I think getting to consistency and scale when you're looking at upcycled ingredients is a bit of a challenge that we've seen when we've been working with suppliers to try to find ingredients to incorporate into our supply chain. From our point, from a manufacturing standpoint, our facilities, I think we're the first company in North America to have all of our facilities zero waste to landfill certified. And a lot of that comes from partners, finding farms to partner with any sort of food waste product. So it is going back into the agricultural system. We learned that a lot of food companies don't donate codated products to food banks because they don't want the brand tarnished, which we completely do not agree with. We think everyone has the right to healthy organic food, and so we do our part to support food banks across North America while addressing our food waste problems as well. So it's challenges and opportunities for sure.
Kate, I know Sodexo is, it's a big issue.
Right. I mean, we're not a producer, so we're definitely more at the production sort of the operational and the consumer side of things. And we absolutely expect all of our culinary teams to divert any surplus good quality food to people that can use it. But we're also trying to educate our customers. That's probably the harder thing to do. In the kitchens, we weigh our waste and have production discussions about the data that we're seeing, pulling in our frontline and saying, what did you observe this week? Why do you see a trend? Why was this wasted? Why was, this service heightened? And, the goal is to bring that down cut it in half. And we are doing that where we're tracking every day. But the consumer piece is very challenging.
Yeah.
It's definitely, we think too about, unfortunately at this point, some consumer food waste is fairly intractable. So we also think about, what's the impact of the product that we're wasting? And so we're trying to build our menus. We've got a commitment around 70% low carbon menus by 2030. And so if the food is wasted, let's try to waste food that has a lower impact from the production side. So it's looking at the entire picture of the life cycle of that food product.
Data and trade is going to be critical, and cold chains. That's the other thing that we have to be thinking about, infrastructure and cold chains, especially when it comes to food loss and moving things around. But yes, a gentleman here.
Hi, Stuart Lindsay from the Campbell's Company. Quick question on the regenerative organic. We sourcing a few products under that scheme and have launched a few SKUs. Do you see that very recently? Do you see that standard breaking through in terms of consumer consciousness, or is it another thing within a constellation of different ideas? And I ask because how do you bridge from organic, not well understood, but well recognized, to regenerative organic, which is a subtle difference?
Yeah, consumer understanding of regenerative organic is definitely a challenge. So last year we launched 2 regenerative organic oatmeals. I think they're the first multi-ingredient product to carry the ROC certification. And they've been doing all right. I think the feedback that we've gotten is that people do not understand what regenerative organic certification is. We put as much information as we can on our packaging. I know the Regenerative Organic Alliance is doing work to create education campaigns and shelf talkers and put products together in parts of the store to get people to recognize the logo. But it is very early days. So I think the success of the consumer understanding of the logo is yet to be seen. We're continuing on because it's the right thing to do, and we believe in implementing these practices. But yeah, I think it still remains to be seen.
We are out of time. I know this is, again, a very interesting topic, but we do have a break, a coffee break right now at 3:30, and then we will be back here at 4. So if I might offer people to talk to you after, during the coffee break, I might do that. But please join me in thanking our panelists, Kate, Jyoti, and Mark.